Beneath Kentucky's lakes, forests, and back roads are places that did not simply fade away. They were flooded, stripped, burned, bought out, abandoned, or left behind so completely that in some cases the only proof they existed is a cemetery, a stone ruin, or a name on a roadside sign. Kentucky is full of communities that once felt permanent. People built churches, stores, schools, ferries, rail lines, and family homes with every expectation that their town would outlast them. But permanence is fragile. A dam can erase a river town. A federal land project can clear out generations in a few years. A company can build an entire world in the mountains, then dismantle it when the coal is gone. And sometimes a place does not vanish in one dramatic blow at all. Sometimes it just gets quieter, smaller, older, until the rest of the world stops noticing it is still there. That is what makes Kentucky's ghost towns so unsettling. Many of them are not deep in inaccessible wilderness. They are under popular lakes, inside national parks, beside highways, or just beyond ordinary roads people use every day. You can pass near them without ever realizing that families once cooked dinner there, buried their dead there, raised children there, and assumed that life would keep going there forever. Some of these places disappeared because progress demanded sacrifice. Others vanished because industry took everything it could and moved on. A few survive only as echoes attached to larger stories: a song, a ruin, a battlefield, a scenic train ride. But every one of them leaves behind the same hard question. What happens when a town is erased, but the memory of the people who lived there refuses to disappear? At the bottom of Kentucky Lake sits one of the strangest lost towns in the state. Birmingham, in Marshall County, was once a thriving river community on the Tennessee River, a place built with industrial ambition and enough confidence to imagine itself becoming something much bigger. Its founders even borrowed the name of Birmingham in England, hoping to create their own iron-centered success story in western Kentucky. For a time, the place was growing fast. A stave mill gave work to hundreds, churches multiplied, and the population swelled to the point that Birmingham briefly outshone nearby Benton in size and energy. Then, the Tennessee Valley Authority changed everything. In the early 1940s, Kentucky Dam was under construction downstream, and the river was about to be transformed into Kentucky Lake. Birmingham happened to stand in the path of that new water. Residents were forced to leave, and as the lake rose after the dam's completion, the town disappeared below the surface. What makes Birmingham especially haunting is that it was never entirely wiped clean before the flooding came. When water levels drop enough, outlines of streets, foundations, and buried structures can appear again through mud and silt, like a town trying to surface after decades underwater. Nearby, an old cemetery remains visible on a small island, its stones still keeping watch over a place no one can truly return to. Golden Pond in Trigg County is remembered by many people as a name on a sign, but it was once a living community that had already survived more than most towns ever do. Fires had destroyed it not once but twice, and each time the people rebuilt. It endured isolation, economic pressure, and the slow hardships of rural life on the peninsula between two major rivers. Families farmed there, fished there, and stayed rooted to that land over generations. What finally ended Golden Pond was not a natural disaster and not a market collapse. It was a federal vision. In the 1960s, the government moved forward with the Land Between the Lakes project, turning a vast stretch between Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley into a public recreation area. That required clearing out the people already living there. Hundreds of families across the region were displaced, and Golden Pond was among the communities sacrificed for the plan. Residents fought the process, objected to the prices offered for their land, and in some cases held out as long as they could. It did not matter in the end. By the close of the decade, the town had been demolished. Today, Travelers pass through the area on US 68 and see the name Golden Pond attached to a visitor center, but that modern marker stands where an actual town used to breathe. A couple of old horse-mounting blocks are among the few tangible reminders that the place was once real. Ford's Ferry in Crittenden County carries a different kind of ghost. This was not merely a lost settlement. It was the center of a criminal empire hidden behind the appearance of respectability. In the early frontier era, James Ford built a reputation that made him seem like exactly the kind of man a river community would trust. He was a militia officer, a family man, a church-going figure, and the operator of a busy ferry along the Ohio River. On the surface, he looked like a stabilizing presence in a rough country. Behind that public image, Ford was allegedly leading one of the most notorious outlaw operations on the frontier. His ferry gave him the perfect vantage point to watch commerce moving along the river. Boats carrying valuable freight could be identified, targeted, and robbed, while victims often never survived long enough to identify who had organized the attack. Ford's connections reportedly extended to river pirates and overland bandits, allowing him to operate a network of violence while still being treated locally as a man of standing. After his death in the 1830s, the legend of the place did not become a tourist spectacle. The old ferry area is quiet now, with little to announce the history attached to it. That silence may be the eeriest part. A landscape that once concealed theft and murder now looks almost too calm to believe. Paradise in Muhlenberg County may be the best-known lost town in Kentucky because music kept its name alive long after the place itself vanished. Long before it became famous in song, Paradise was a small river community along the Green River, the kind of place that seemed picturesque enough to belong to another era, even while it still existed. Families had roots there, children spent long summers near the water, and daily life moved at a rhythm shaped by ferry crossings, general stores, and familiar faces. Industry swallowed that world. Strip mining transformed the surrounding land, and a massive coal-fired power plant went up beside the town in the late 1950s. Soot and ash settled over homes and gardens. Property changed hands. Residents were bought out. By the late 1960s, the last people were gone, and the buildings had been leveled to expand the plant. What could have become just another forgotten displacement instead entered American memory through John Prine, who turned Paradise into one of the most enduring songs ever written about loss, place, and environmental destruction. The town is gone, but its cemetery remains above the industrial landscape that replaced it. That contrast says everything. A community once defined by river life is now recalled in the shadow of the machinery that erased it. Airdrie, also in Muhlenberg County, looks less like a vanished Kentucky town than the remains of some misplaced fortress. Deep in the woods stands a towering stone furnace structure built from local limestone, severe and improbable enough that people later invented myths to explain it. In reality, Airdrie began as an ambitious industrial dream. A Scottish landowner bought thousands of acres there in the 1850s and tried to establish an iron operation using imported labor and expertise from Scotland. The plan failed almost immediately. The ore found in Kentucky did not behave the way the investors expected, and the furnace produced little of value. Within only a short span, the effort collapsed. The founder walked away, leaving behind the hulking remains of what was supposed to become a productive industrial town. Later, owners searched for other uses for the property, including oil exploration, but those efforts failed too. What survives is the ruin itself, standing in the forest as proof of a grand plan that never learned how to fit the land it was built on. For years, locals even mistook the furnace remains for an old prison, which tells you how strange and out of place the structure still feels. Blue Heron in McCreary County existed, because a coal company decided it could build an entire town in a place most people would never willingly choose to live. The hollow was so isolated that no road reached it. Instead, the company ran a railroad into the gorge and created a settlement beside the river, complete with housing, a school, and the basic institutions needed to keep mining families in place. Life there was shaped almost entirely by the company. People lived in company houses, bought from company stores, and depended on company transportation. That arrangement lasted only as long as the coal did. When the mine shut down in the early 1960s, Blue Heron unraveled fast. The remarkable part is that many of the buildings were designed to be temporary all along. Structures could be taken apart and moved to the next operation when needed. Once the mine was done, much of the town could simply be carried away. Forest and weather handled the rest. Today, Blue Heron has been memorialized in one of the most unusual ways imaginable. Instead of reconstructing the camp with conventional buildings, the site uses skeletal metal outlines marking the original footprints of homes, a church, a school, and other structures. Visitors walk through empty frames filled with memory rather than walls. It is a ghost town represented literally by ghosts of architecture. Stearns, also in McCreary County, was the headquarters that made places like Blue Heron possible. At the beginning of the 20th century, a lumber baron saw vast timber and coal resources in southeastern Kentucky and moved to control them on an enormous scale. Stearns became the nerve center of a company domain stretching across rugged land that demanded its own railroad system. Tracks pushed deep into the mountains, connecting camps, mines, and mills to the larger economy. When the coal and lumber operations declined in the mid-20th century, Stearns began to empty out. Unlike some lost places, it never fully disappeared, but what remains today feels like a shell of the world it once commanded. Many old company buildings sit vacant or underused, yet one piece of the old system still moves: the railroad depot. Scenic excursions now ride along tracks originally laid for extraction, carrying tourists through country that once echoed with industrial purpose. That surviving railroad makes Stearns feel like a half-living ghost, not dead enough to vanish, not alive enough to reclaim what it used to be. Barthell, another McCreary County coal camp, offers one of the strangest experiences on this list because people can still sleep there. Founded as one of the early camps of the Stearns operation, Barthell was tightly packed into a narrow hollow and built around the dangers and routines of mining life. It had a doctor on site, which says a great deal about how hazardous daily existence must have been in a place like that. When a major fire destroyed the mine tipple in the 1940s, the company chose not to rebuild. Without an operating mine, Barthell's reason for existing collapsed. Over time, the original structures decayed or were removed. Then, decades later, the site was restored in a way few ghost towns ever are. Cabins were rebuilt and made usable, allowing visitors to stay overnight in spaces modeled on the homes once occupied by mining families. That makes Barthell less a frozen ruin than a re-entered past. But the romantic surface should not hide the harsher truth of how the camp functioned. Workers were often paid in company scrip, money that was not really money at all outside the company's control. In that system, leaving town could mean leaving behind the value of your labor. Even a restored ghost town still carries the imprint of the trap that built it. Gravel Switch in Marion County is a quieter kind of ghost town, the kind that does not announce itself with ruins or dramatic legends. Its most famous surviving feature is a tiny post office that has operated since the mid-19th century and is often described as the smallest active one in the country. It still sorts mail in a space so small it sounds almost absurd. Around it, though, the town has steadily thinned. The rail connection that once mattered is gone. Businesses that gave the place a reason to thrive have faded or relocated. Population has dropped to the point that the town feels less like a center and more like a lingering habit of settlement. Yet the post office remains, and that matters. In rural America, whatever survives longest often becomes the final anchor of identity. Gravel Switch has not vanished in a single event. It has been ghosting itself slowly for generations, and that may be more unsettling than sudden destruction. A town can disappear by inches just as surely as it can disappear under a lake. Rosine in Ohio County survives in cultural memory more powerfully than in physical scale. This is where Bill Monroe grew up, absorbing the sounds that would eventually shape bluegrass music itself. In Rosine, music was not a formal invention. It was part of ordinary life, built from fiddle tunes, voices, rhythm, and the habits of a rural community. Monroe took those influences and transformed them into something with national reach. The town he came from, however, did not grow alongside that legacy. Rosine dwindled as transportation links weakened, younger residents moved elsewhere, and the local economy lost the strength to hold people in place. No catastrophe erased it. It simply faded, which is often how real places disappear. Today, Rosine has only a small population left, along with key landmarks tied to Monroe's memory, including the nearby grounds where musicians still gather to honor him. That leaves the town in a peculiar position. The art born there became world famous, while the place itself shrank toward obscurity. In a sense, Rosine was preserved by sound more than by stone. The communities associated with Mammoth Cave in Edmonson County represent another form of erasure, one hidden inside one of the country's most celebrated landscapes. Millions know Mammoth Cave as a national treasure, a place of astonishing underground scale and geological wonder. Far fewer think about the people who lived on that land before it became a park. Creating Mammoth Cave National Park required years of land acquisition, conflict, and displacement. Families who had lived there for generations were pushed out through purchase in eminent domain, often at prices that did not reflect what the land meant to them. One of the communities caught in that process was Proctor, along the Green River. Churches, schools, farms, and homes were removed, and in many cases, structures were burned. As the land reverted to forest, traces of settlement faded beneath the park's natural beauty. Visitors now hike through scenery that appears timeless without realizing that orchards, fields, and family spaces once stood there. The story becomes even more layered when you remember Stephen Bishop, the enslaved explorer, whose knowledge of the cave system shaped early mapping and understanding of Mammoth Cave itself. He knew the underground world intimately, while possessing no ownership over the land above it. The surviving cemeteries within the park remain among the clearest reminders that a human landscape existed there before preservation redefined it. Camp Nelson in Jessamine County stands apart from the others because its ghost is not only about disappearance, it is about freedom, betrayal, and memory on a national scale. Established during the Civil War as a major Union supply base, Camp Nelson became one of the most significant sites in the country for the recruitment of black soldiers after the Union began formally enlisting enslaved men. Word spread through Kentucky with extraordinary power. Reach Camp Nelson, enlist, swear the oath, and you become free. Thousands made that journey. Men came to join the United States colored troops, and many brought wives, children, and relatives, or were followed by them. For those families, Camp Nelson represented safety, emancipation, and a break from slavery. But the reality was harsher and more unstable than hope allowed. At one point, hundreds of women and children connected to enlisted soldiers were expelled from the camp in cold weather because they had no recognized status there. Many died from exposure before authorities relented. Their suffering was recorded by missionaries who witnessed what happened, preserving names and details that might otherwise have been erased. After the war, the camp closed, and a new community emerged from the people left behind on that ground. Today, Camp Nelson is preserved as a national monument, and the surviving earthworks, cemetery, and documentary record make it one of Kentucky's most important historical landscapes. Yet for many Americans, it remains far less known than it should be. That is what gives it the feeling of a ghost town, not emptiness alone, but the gap between the magnitude of what happened there and how little most people know about it now. Taken together, these places reveal that ghost towns are not just abandoned buildings, they are arguments with memory. Birmingham asks what happens when a town is drowned but not forgotten. Golden Pond and the Mammoth Cave communities force the question of who pays when land is repurposed for the public good. Paradise shows how industry can erase a town while art saves its name. Blue Heron, Stearns, and Barthell expose the temporary logic of company power, how entire communities could be assembled, controlled, and then discarded. Rosine proves that a place can vanish physically while leaving an enormous mark on culture. Camp Nelson reminds us that some of the most important lost places in America are not merely ruined, they are under-remembered. And that may be the most unsettling part of all. These towns are not only gone. In many cases, they were absorbed into something else: a lake, a park, a power plant, a scenic attraction, a local legend. Their absence has been made convenient. But if you look closely at Kentucky, the evidence is still there. A cemetery above the water, a stone furnace in the woods, a ghost frame where a school once stood, a road sign carrying the name of a town that no longer has a town behind it. That is how places truly become ghosts. First, the people are forced out. Then, the structures disappear. Then, the landscape is given a new purpose. And finally, memory becomes thin enough that most people stop asking what was there before. Kentucky is full of places where that process happened, and once you know their stories, it becomes much harder to drive through the state without wondering how many vanished towns are still just beneath the surface.